Hello everybody, and welcome back to Steven's Fight Show. So, Jake Paul and Tommy Fury fought each other in a highly anticipated bout, and it was a big fight for both men. For Jake, it was about continuing this massive hype train that he's built in the last few years. He's quickly became one of the most talked about fighters in the world in a short amount of time. And for Tommy, this was to protect the Fury family name. He was considered the pro boxer in this fight that had been training in the sport for his entire life, and if he would have lost, he would have had to stay in Saudi Arabia and change his last name. And all of this lived up to the hype in my opinion because the whole pre-fight build-up was great. They were both talking trash to each other, and honestly, they did a good job of selling the fight. Personally, I thought it was an entertaining fight. People are going to say otherwise because Tommy Fury won the fight, but I believe Jake Paul was still in the fight in terms of being there instead of him winning. Jake was never really under any danger in that fight, and he was able to have some success against Tommy. I'll speak more about this later in the video, but right now, we're just going to go over the fight as a whole. I don't think I need to do it round by round specifically, as I believe the whole story of the fight was the same from round 1 to round 8. And then right after that, I'm going to address the biggest problem with Jake Paul in a video right after this, and it's most likely not what you think, especially if you're a Jake Paul hater. I believe that this is something that needs to be said because it's getting a little ridiculous. If I add it into this video would be probably 30 minutes long, and I'm not trying to upload a 30-minute video to my YouTube channel. I need to get my point across and make sure that my message is delivered in that video because it's something that needs to be said. So like I said again, if you want to see what I have to say, tune into the next video right after this. Okay, so let's get straight into the fight. So in case you didn't know, I didn't make a prediction video for this because I was busy, but my prediction for this fight was that Jake was going to win by stoppage in the 7th or 8th round. I thought Tommy was going to start off the fight fast and pile up points, and as the fight goes on, he was going to slow down from Jake's power, pressure, and work rate. And from that, I thought it would have resulted into Tommy getting caught by a big bomb from Jake late, and that's how the fight was going to end, by TKO. But obviously that didn't happen. So in this fight, I thought both men's walkouts showed a lot about how they felt throughout the fight. Tommy actually looked like he was embracing the moment when he walked out. Like, it looked like my mans was actually excited to be there, and it was a bit of a shock because people thought he was going to be shook at the moment because it was his first ever main event. But credit to him, he held himself very well. Now Jake, on the other hand, looked very odd. When they showed him walking out to the ring, it looked like he was contemplating in his head. He tried to get into the groove when his song dropped, but it didn't hit like how it usually does. He gets in the ring and Tommy is immediately stalking him down, and I don't think Jake was expecting that. Like I said, I won't go through the fight round by round because I don't think it's necessary. I'm just going to go through the fight as a whole. So when the bell rang in the first round, Tommy was immediately trying to put Jake on his heels. That was definitely a part of the game plan because I think Tommy and his team wanted to know if Jake was really about this fighting life. Because you have to remember, prior to the fight, they kept calling Jake a YouTuber, they kept saying he wasn't a real fighter, this and that. So it makes sense as to why Tommy wanted to start off the fight just like this. And the majority of this fight was Tommy picking Jake apart at distance with his jab, combination punching, volume, and movement. From a technical standpoint, Tommy was a lot better than Jake. It looked like Tommy had a game plan, stuck to it, and understood his way around the ring better. Jake started off the fight slow and flat. He was engaging in a boxing match with Tommy, and he was catching him here and there in the middle of his offense, but he never really had any consistent and dominant success. Not enough for him to win rounds. He pretty much didn't have an answer for the jab. There were moments where he did employ head movement, but it wasn't effective because he was only moving his head for the sake of moving. He was moving with his head down to avoid the jab. He wasn't moving with the intentions of countering. Jake's defense as a whole wasn't great either. He has a solid foundation in terms of head movement, hand placement, and a tight high guard, but footwork wise, he looks very flat-footed. He also has a big tendency to clinch, and that's definitely due to his inexperience. When Tommy would attack in a straight line, he would either try to time Tommy coming in or clinch. And it's almost like a natural reaction for an untrained person when someone attacks you and you clinch them to stop them from throwing punches at you. For the first half of the fight, I would say Tommy won it convincingly. I thought Jake won the 3rd round, but besides that, Tommy looked like he was scoring more, it looked like he was in control, and he was winning in terms of ring generalship. Tommy was staying on the back foot, moving side to side, trying to lure Jake into a counter shot, using his jab to nullify Jake's offense, and he was putting punches together moving forward. Jake was struggling to cut off the ring against Tommy. He looked flat on his feet, whereas Tommy was on his toes. He couldn't really close range effectively, and he was overreaching with a lot of his punches, especially to the body. However, with that being said, he did time some really good punches. He landed stiff jabs, counter check hooks, and he also landed his signature overhand right many times in this fight. And the interesting part about all of this is that all of these were set up off of the jab from Tommy. He would slip on the inside, and that's where the counter opportunities would present itself. But there were two things that went wrong for Jake. The first reason being that the power didn't really affect Tommy at all. And this leads into the next reason being that he failed to capitalize in the moments where he did land. There would be moments where Jake would land a hard shot, but he never followed up on that opportunity. What he should have done was pressure Tommy and follow up with punches, especially when Tommy is landing with volume on the other end. Jake also looked very predictable when Tommy was up against the ropes. There were very minimal feints from Jake. He couldn't land the shots that he wanted to land because there were no feints or setups. Tommy was able to see everything coming, and he was pretty much waiting for Jake to open up so he can counter, which gave Tommy every single opportunity to continue to stick and move with his jab. In the second half of this fight, this is where things start to heat up. Jake was a lot more active, and both men continued to have the same success. Round 5 was a big round for Jake, which I believe he won. He was landing clean power punches very effectively, the stiff jab was continuing to find its target, the counter check hook, and the overhand right was still there. This was one of the few rounds where Jake's power punches were able to outpoint Tommy's activity since he wasn't landing a whole lot. However, Jake continued to make mistakes such as loading up on every single punch, not doubling up on the jab, and still not following up with punches. He threw every single punch with 100% of his power and never really thought to take some steam off of his punches to try and find Tommy before throwing power punches. Since Jake usually doesn't have the same high work rate as Tommy, he tends to be more selective with his offense. However, it wasn't efficient for 8 rounds. He was also leading with power and punching with his head down, and that did work for him until it didn't, because Tommy was able to read it, and that's when he threw uppercuts. He also threw his jabs down because that's where Jake's head would be. And in the last 2 rounds of the fight, Tommy was pretty much outworking Jake, and any success that Jake had against him, Tommy would make sure to get it right back immediately. Of course, the jab and the volume were still money for him. In the last round of the fight, Jake lands a big knockdown on Tommy early. Now this is where things get a little funny because people were trying to debate that this wasn't a knockdown. Yes, it is. If you believe otherwise, then you are uneducated about the sport. People were saying that because Tommy slipped, it doesn't count as a knockdown. First of all, the punch lands clean. There's no illegal contact from Jake Paul. Second of all, he slips after the punch lands. Look at it in the replay. Jake lands a stiff jab, and that's how Tommy slipped. But let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's say Tommy did slip. Unless his feet got tangled up with Jake, it doesn't matter if he slipped or not. If my glove makes contact with your face and you're off balance, which is not my problem, and either both hands or knees touch the canvas, it doesn't matter whether or not if you're hurt. My friends, that is a 10-8 round scored. No buts, no ifs, no nothing. Point blank period. You don't have to be rocked for it to count as a knockdown. However, I believe this round should be scored a 9-9 round, making it an even round because of Tommy's activity that ultimately pushed Jake back several times. On top of that, Jake didn't really land anything significant after the knockdown and had a hard time executing his offense. So watching the fight live, I had Tommy winning 75-74, but after watching it back, I have Tommy winning it 76-73. I believe Jake won rounds 3 and 5, and Tommy wins every other round besides the last round being even. And I think that's fair. I believe the best case scenario for both men is that Tommy wins 76-73 and Jake earns a draw. I don't think you can go through that fight and score 5 rounds convincingly for Jake Paul. Good performances by both men, and it was for sure a good boxing fight. If you were watching this fight, you wouldn't even really be able to tell which one was the YouTuber and which one was the boxer. Both of them looked like boxers in that ring. I think Jake's inability to fight on the inside was one of his biggest detriments because the whole time when I was watching this fight, I told myself, the more this fight stays at distance, the worse it is for Jake. Jake had to get up in his chest and dog it out inside the pocket because that's where Jake could have taken control. But because he's used to fighting at distance, this task was simply foreign to him. Oh yeah, how could I forget? The ref sucked. My mans took off points for the weakest reasons I've ever seen in my life. Jake wasn't even really hitting him in the back of the head like that, bro. And Tommy was deducted a point for holding. Like bro, the ref was slowing down the fight with all these point deductions that he was giving. I swear I don't even remember if the ref even gave them any warnings. Even though the ref sucked, the world's responses sucked even more. I'm going to explain further in my follow-up video after this, which is right after this video, but one of the things that people were saying was that this wasn't a close fight. Yes, it was evident that Tommy won the fight, but people had the audacity to say that Jake got dominated. They were saying that this wasn't a competitive fight, and I was sitting there like, huh? Did you not see the shots that he was landing? Like, this guy is considered a YouTuber and he was landing punches like that. Tommy won more rounds convincingly, yes, but people were trying to make it seem like it was a shutout from Tommy when that wasn't the case. People were saying that Jake won only one round, or they couldn't find a round to score for Jake, which was BS. Jake Paul won at least 2 rounds of this fight. Rounds 3 and 5 should be his rounds easy. Any other round, you can say Tommy won it. But rounds 3 and 5 should go to Jake Paul. I would love to debate with anyone who thinks otherwise. If anything, it would probably be pointless because they're either haters or people that think they know boxing. And ladies and gentlemen, this is only a fraction of the toxicity of the responses. There's a lot more that I need to talk about, but you're going to have to watch my next video right after this, where I uncovered the biggest problem with Jake Paul. And that is it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to what I have to say, and let me know, who won the fight and why? Jake Paul or Tommy Fury? Drop a comment and let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you guys enjoy content that is related to combat sports, please drop a like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel down below. That would be greatly appreciated. Make sure to check out the part 2 of this video right after this video. Also, make sure to follow my Twitter and my blog if you want further fight content from myself. And other than that, it's been Steven, signing out. Peace!